It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Yaffa Silberg, and your maiden name was Hirschberg, and we're here in your beautiful apartment in Jerusalem. And Yaffa, if you can tell us a little about your life and your story and your family, where you came from, and it's such a privilege to be with you today.
It is my pleasure, Dr. Glassman, to tell my story. I was born in the ghetto of my city called Luków in Poland on September 11, 1941. There was a ghetto there already, and the situation was deteriorating in the ghetto. And 2 weeks or 3 weeks after my birth, my mother died of typhoid. So I never had, sit down, I never had a mother, but I was in my grandfather's house. His name was Rav Gershon Chanoch Flug. He was a very wealthy man, had real estate, had businesses. Above all, he was a sofer stam. I have a mezuzah that he brought here. And he felt after my mother died, when a few months later, when I was around 7 months, that a baby will not survive in the ghetto. And he told my father that he would like to find a Christian family. He was a leader of the Jewish community, one of the leaders, a sofer stam who wrote Sifrei Torah, mezuzot, and he also had people working for him. I was told almost like 100 people were writing Sifrei Torah for him. In fact, Sir Montefiore from London asked him before World War II, would he come to his house, to his court in London, and write Sefer Torah? And my Savta, my grandmother Sarah, said, what? To leave the Golden Medina, Poland? They were very wealthy. She had maids for cooking and for laundry and for cleaning. And before Pesach every year, there were no wallpapers, so an artist would come and paint new murals in the living room. It was a very wealthy house. But he, my grandfather, was a tzaddik. If people came for tzedakah and he didn't have money, mezuman, on him, he would run to a neighbor to borrow, not to embarrass the person who was asking. Every Friday when he went to the mikvah, his wife, my savta, would give him another white shirt, because if a poor person came to the mikvah and didn't have a shirt for Shabbos, he would give him his shirt off his back. So he always had an extra white Shabbos shirt. It was a very, very wealthy, wonderful from home. He was not visionist, but I forgot the name of the chassid that he was, but it'll come to me. And it was a wonderful home, and I was born in the ghetto in this home. So and when I was...
These are pictures?
Yes, I would like to show you the pictures of my mother's family. This is my mother right over here, Ita Hirschberg Flug. And he was Rabbi Gershon Chanoch Flug, and my Savta, my grandmother Sarah Flug. They had my Aunt Frida, my Uncle Julius, my Uncle Zvi, and my little Aunt Rachel, who was only 12. And there was another uncle who unfortunately, between the wars, died. So, so at the My father's family, okay. And here is my father's family. It was also a very well-respected, wealthy family. They had a special bakery for special occasions, for weddings, for brises, etc. Very famous in the city, our city Lokov. This is the father, David Eliezer, and Hirschberg, and this is also my Savta Sarah, she was Hirschberg, and here's my father standing. He was a yeshiva bacher when the war started. His sister Shoshana, never married. His brother is Zvi Hirsch, and wife and 2 children, and my great-grandmother, who I'm named after, Shendel Esther. The whole family, there was one more brother who went to New York before World War II, between the war. His name was Simcha. And the whole family here, except my father and the brother in New York, they were all killed, gassed in Treblinka. That's where they ended. And the only, I have no memories of uncles or grandparents at all. And my father survived, and I'll tell you later how. So this is my father.
And where did your father learn? In which yeshiva?
I don't know the name.
But he went to yeshiva?
He was in yeshiva till the war, till he got married, actually, 28 or whatever. The situation in the ghetto deteriorated. People were dying on the streets because there were plagues. There was no sanitation, no food, no food, no sanitation, no medication, and of course plagues started spreading. The biggest one was typhoid, and my mother died 2 weeks after I was born from typhoid, and because there was no penicillin to be gotten. And after a few months, when I was still living in my grandfather's house with my father, my grandfather, Alav Shalom, of Gershon Chanor Fluk, said to my father, a baby will not survive in the war. He would like to send me, to give me, to be hidden by a Christian family. I was around 7, 8 months old. Here's a picture of me when I was given away, about this age. And my grandfather found a family by the name of Vanievsky at the outskirts of the city. Their job was to be a taxi driver, meaning a horse and buggy taking people to the train station. And also he had like a tavern, some sort of, they had, the family, 2 elderly sons. Both of them were not well. One was in a wheelchair and one was a little retarded. And they were very happy to take a baby who was healthy, and they agreed to hide me. My grandfather paid every month a certain amount, and I must tell you, when I heard the story of my life, I was around 14. At that age, I wasn't interested in money, so I never asked how much did they pay. And that's true later on, you'll see. So I have no clue, but I'm sure it was a very, very nice sum of money. Now that was in 1941, 42 already when I was given. I was born in 41, but 7 months later, it was 42. And now I was with the Christian family. In the meantime, the ghetto was being emptied. Oh, this is my grandfather, Harav Gershon Chanor Fluk, Zichrono Livracha. And in 1942-43, with the assistance of Adolf Eichmann Ymach Shimo, advised Hitler Ymach Shimo to do the final solution. He felt the Jews are going to die like flies in the ghetto, but they did die on the sidewalk, but not as fast as he wanted. And they decided to liquidate all the ghettos in Europe, put the Jews on trains and bring them to concentration camps and labor camps. Now, how do you round up people in 1942 in the ghetto? I can't explain it to you. Somebody is coming. Who's coming? 2 SS soldiers with 2 German shepherds with 2 machine guns come at midnight to your home, knock on the door at midnight. When the door is open, you have a half an hour to take 1 suitcase and come down to the train station. Now I ask you, my friends, I lived, let's say, in Long Island, West Hempstead for 44 years. I had a house. When I decided to sell it, I didn't know where to begin, what to do, what to pack. I said, what am I doing? Now picture this. Look of our city, according to historian, goes back to the Middle Ages, to the 14th century, 1300. Families lived in the same apartment, generation. How do you pack a life of generation in 1 suitcase and leave that home? Painting, crystal, silver, everything in a beautiful big apartment. But you do what you're told with 2 SS German Nazis and machine guns. You do as you're told. And everybody goes down into the square at midnight. The Jewish people in Lukov amounted in 1943, and they were shipped by train to Treblinka. I don't have to describe you the rides because Elie Wiesel did it the best in his book Night. The crowdiness, the situation, no water, no food, no bathroom places. You couldn't even sit, you couldn't even stand. And here people are coming to a concentration camp called Treblinka. Treblinka was a death camp. What does it mean by a death camp? It means they didn't even sleep 1 night there. They were taken off the train, men, women separated, children taken away from their parents and babies from mothers' hands, and now they were put into like big rooms where they were told to undress. They were giving soap and they were sure they're taking a shower. Well, my friends, it was a shower, but it was a gas shower. They were gassed to death in Treblinka. It was a death camp. No one came alive out of Treblinka. And after they were gassed, the bones were burned in ovens. So no one remained from my father's family or my Savta, my mother's family. The 2 brothers went to Russia, to the Russian army. They were saved. My Aunt Frida and my father jumped off the trains going to Treblinka, and I'll tell you in a minute how they jumped off. My little aunt, she was 12, her name was Rachel, a beautiful little girl, 12-year-old, blue eyes. They all had blue eyes with blonde braids. She and my Aunt Frida, who was only 14 when the war started, they worked in ammunition factory in the ghetto. The Nazis, the Marshimam, used the teenagers to work in ammunition factory. And you know, the Jews in the ghetto, before they were mounted, could not leave they could not be outside the ghetto after dark. They would be shot. So here my Aunt Frida and my Aunt Rachel, they were detained in the factory because 2 SS were coming to inspect the working of the ammunition factory, and the director of it, a goy, he took 30 Jewish women, locked them in a room, and told them not to make a noise. And when the inspectors came, he had keys, open all the doors, and then they wanted to open the door. He said, I don't have the key, it's a storage room, and they left, they believed it. And when the 2 inspectors, SS German Nazis, left, he opened the door and he told them, run for your life back to the ghetto. So they ran as fast as they could. It's in the dark after sunset, and they came to the fence, the wire, barbed wire fence, and there was a hole underground so people could sneak in if they were late. And my daughter Frida managed to get under, and Rachel was almost ready to go under the fence when an SS German Nazi, when I say German, they were all Nazis, he was Nazis, shot her to death in front of my aunt. And that was one of the devastating things of her life. Now, when they came riding on the trains, my Aunt Frida and my father, Nissan Hirschberg, Zichrono Livracha, they told my Savta, Sava, we are going to jump off the train. Why don't you jump with us? And she looked at them and she said, Kinderlach, it's written in the Torah that thou shalt not kill yourself. And if I jump, for sure I'm going to kill myself. But I want you to know, a Savta in those days, I was the first grandchild, was not 60, 70. Maybe she was 42, 45. They get married very young. So what if she would jump? But she said, no, I am going to where Hashem wants me to go. And she knew where she was going, to her death. And she told her daughter Frida and my father, Alehem Shalom, you are young, you try to save your life. And they jumped. Now how do you jump a train that's going at least 60 miles an hour? Well, that story I heard from a landslide from our city, Lokov, who taped for Spielberg, and I heard it on his tape. And he said the following: on every train there is a mercenary, on every car of the train there's a mercenary soldier with a machine gun. And if you jump, he's there to kill you, to shoot you. And now, how do they jump? So it's the genius mind of the Jewish cop, a Yiddish cop. They, in each car of the train, they counted how many bullets is he shooting. And when suddenly, let's say 20, 25 bullets in the machine gun in the belt, now he has to reload. So when there is a pause of 10, 15 minutes, by then you jump. By then you're ready already. How? The beginning of the ghetto, people still, people didn't have radios because Hitler, Ymar Shimo, sent all the Nazis to liquidate, to confiscate all the radios in the ghetto. He didn't want the Jews to know what is happening in the war. And as a result, no one knew what happened in the next city, on the next city. There were no newspapers now. So, but my grandfather, Harav Gershon Chanor Flugzal, he hid it in his basement so well that once a week, people would come, friends, after midnight, hide in the basement and listen to BBC. And by 1943, when they were mounted on the trains, they knew where they were going. They knew they were going to the death camp, Treblinka. So the young people who felt that they could save themselves took tools, screwdrivers, hammers, wrenches, into that one suitcase. And you know what? They managed to jump. How? Before there was even a pause, one person went on top of the other person's shoulders, because the windows were very high and they have metal bars. And they unscrewed the bars, and when there was 10 minutes quiet, there was one standing on the shoulders of another, and somebody pushed them out the window. That's how the Jewish genius had worked, and that's how they jumped. Now, I don't have statistics. I always say I should Google and check it out. How many survived? Most probably a good 80% died from such a jump, concussion, hitting, breaking a head, bleeding to death. But there were those who jumped and were lucky. My father and my Aunt Frida, both of them, they jumped at different time, but they survived. And before they were mounted, while they were waiting at the train station, the word passed around that if by chance you should survive, come back to the ghetto and come into one roof of a building, and we'll see what to do. And that's what my daughter Frida and my father did. My daughter Frida told me that she had a concussion, that she slept a day and a half, because she remembered the sun and the dark and the sun, whatever. She didn't have a watch and on her probably. And P.S., they walked for miles back to Lukov, and they went on top of the roof. At midnight, somebody came from the woods to the top of the roof, and he said, "My dear friends, we cannot stay in Lukov 1 minute. The German Nazis will kill us, or the Polacks, who were just as bad during the war as the German killing Jews, they will kill you. We must leave right now, because Lukov is Judenrein. It's empty from Jews. There are no ghetto, no Jews here. You must follow me into the woods." This is 1943. My father and my aunt live in the woods. Now, let's go back to the family that adopted me, the Waniewski. They raised me as their baby. I was 7, 8 months old when the war was over in 1945. I'm around 3.5. And they loved me, because if they didn't raise me with warmth and love, I probably would have been a little misfit. But the fact that the early years of my life I had a warm parents who didn't want to give me back even, is the fact that they raised me to keep. They never thought, like all the Goyim, that Jews will ever come back to Lukov or to Poland. The Goyim were shocked after the war. They killed Jews who came back to the home. So now, after the war, my daughter Frida and my father, Zichronam Livracha, they come back to Lukov, and they, and they asked the Waniewski family nicely that they would like to get me back. So they don't want to give me back, they refuse. Now I want you to understand, my grandfather paid them from 1942 to 43, about a year, and then I forgot to tell you, before Jews were mounted to Treblinka, 100 men were put in back of the shul and were shot in cold blood, and my grandfather, Harav Gershon Chalof Fluchzal, was one of them. So by 1943, the Waniewski family didn't get money anymore. Now, if they took me for the money, they would have given me to SS, the German, to kill me or send me to be killed in a concentration camp. Or if they wanted to make me Christian, they would give me to a monastery, but they didn't. They really adopted me as their child, and they weren't in their mind ever dreaming that my father will come back. So now they didn't want to give me back. So my father thought if he would get some money and give them, money, maybe they will release me. And he went back to my father's house. Nothing was really left but the basement. And he went to the basement. And in the basement, my grandfather used to make wine. He had like 5, 6 barrels, wood barrels of wine, and for the Chagim and Shabbat. And the Goyim, the Polacks who raided everything that was in the apartment, the house, didn't bother. And the German soldiers, Nazis, Ymach Shemam, maybe they put the sword in, and so there was nothing there, and it was light, so they didn't open it. My father opened it up with my aunt, and wow, lo and behold, it was filled with mink pelts, which was a very valuable commodity because the winters in Poland were freezing, and people made mink coats, so lining mink and boots with mink and hats with mink. So they went to the market and sold it, and again, I never asked how much money they got. This is what the thing is, that a teenager doesn't think money. I'm sure they got a good sum of money, and they came back to the Waniewski family and they said, come back tomorrow. They'll think about it. This is like Moshe Rabbeinu and King Pharaoh, come back tomorrow after the plague. They came back tomorrow and they still didn't want to give me back. So now my father thought he has only one way to get me. In Poland, for some reason, I've never seen it before anywhere in the world, there were like New Year's cards with pictures of people. And this here says Shana, but you can't see the Tova. Shana, a little bit Tova you could see, it's erased. It's from 1940, 40 maybe. And here in Polish it says Shana Tova. And here it says, what is this? Flug. My mother's picture, Ita Flug. In back of it, my father wrote a whole history when he gave me to the Christian Waniewski family. He wrote that I, Nathan Hirschberg, is giving my daughter, who was born on 9/11/41, I'm giving my daughter Shendel Esther. Shendel was my Jewish name, later on Yaffa. Esther, to the Waniewski family to hide me, on this and this address. He took this card, 1945, went to the city hall, and the soldiers in the city hall after the war were Russian soldiers. If you know your history, from the West, the Allies, United States, England, and France came, and from the East came Russia, and they crushed Germany. So now Poland was given to the Russians, and the Russian soldiers understood what my father said, and it was a proof that I am the daughter was given to this family. And that's how I got out. But it wasn't just so. A soldier from the Russian army came with a rifle facing the Waniewski family, and they had to give me back. So now I am 3.5.
So this is when you were 3?
3.5, yeah, when I was taken out.
This is when you left the Polish family?
Yes. This was a tremendous trauma of a separation. I'm 3.5. These are my only parents. I'm sure, I don't know, I didn't ask. I'm sure I cried for weeks. 2 strangers are coming to take me, my father and my aunt. I don't know who they are. And now we are very busy traveling from Lukov, Poland, down all the way through Europe, going to Italy, waiting for a boat to go to Palestine. Now, we were refugees. We were people without citizenship because the Poles, immediately when the war started, took away citizenship from Jews. So we had to sneak out every border at night. And it took us a number of months to come down to Italy.
Yeah, but can I just interrupt and ask you, because I'm intrigued, or I cannot believe it. This Shana Teva card with a picture of your mother, which I've never ever seen before.
Neither no.
How did your father keep it? How did he?
You know, I
How
didn't,
did
but
he
it
have it?
was in his pocket the whole time of the war, one of the inside pockets. And he felt if, God forbid, he should not survive, whoever will open and find this card in Poland will know how to read it, that a Jewish girl is still in a Christian family, Waniewski.
This Shana Teva card saved your life?
Yes. It was my father's who saved it in a way. But in reality, I also looked that my grandfather saved me with the idea to give me to a Christian family.
And do you have any recollections
No.
of the family that
No,
saved you?
that's so ironic because somebody asked me when I spoke to a very fancy elite high school in Connecticut, New York, Goyim, but there must have been some Jews there. Did I keep the Christian family in my heart all my life? Now this I realized was a Christian concept. So I said to whoever asked the question, I don't know, but there was someone in charge of question. I said, you know, I had no recollection or vision of that family because no one took pictures in 1940. I didn't have pictures of them. I didn't know what they even looked like. At 3.5 after I left, I had no more connection or any correspondence later on with them. So I wanted to, but my father said we left on bad situation. They didn't want to give me back. So if you don't have, I'm 3.5, I don't have any recollection. No pictures to look at or anything, I did not remember them. I did, by the way, when I started volunteering Yad Vashem here, wanted to make them the Chasidei Umot
Righteous
Haolam.
amongst the nations?
Yes, but I didn't have enough facts, the first name, but then I was told Goyim who didn't want to return Jewish children cannot be accepted for the honor.
If I can just mention,
Yeah.
by them taking you, they did put their lives in danger, in tremendous danger.
Yes, but I looked Christian a little bit, and they baptized me and they took me to church. I was Christian.
And how did these pictures survive? Also,
I don't know. My father and my aunt and some of them of the family, my 2 uncles who went to Russia had pictures, and there nothing happened to them. So somehow they survived, you know.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're on your way now, and what is your first recollections that you remember as a
in
child?
Eretz Israel, when I end up right now in 1945 on a
If you
kibbutz.
can, sorry for interrupting, but if
My
you can mention, say, your father and your aunt, now you're going after the war,
Yes,
and you're going south
to Italy, to a city called Bari. Was a Jewish refugee camp, and was a city port, and there were boats, legal ones, going to Palestine with, refugees. However, the British wrote a booklet. It's called the book, but it's a little booklet by the name of the white paper, which they restricted immigration of Jewish immigration into Palestine. I have a copy of it somewhere, but oh no, it's in my other place. Why did they do that? They didn't want the Arab population, which was nothing. I don't know, it was a very small population, and they claim today it was their land. They're hardly there. They didn't want the Arab to start rioting. The Arabs were rioting all over. They rioted in Hebron, they rioted. So my father was not allowed to get on a boat. And my Aunt Frida, she took me as if I'm her child. And mothers and children were allowed on the boat. And it was Henrietta Zolt in charge of the children who survived, who were mounted on the ship to go to Palestine. And when we came to the port of Haifa, it's 1945, Youth Aliyah put me and my aunt, who was by now 18 and a half, 19, not 19 yet. She survived the whole high school years during the war in the ghetto and then in the woods. I tell, when I was teaching in New York, I kept telling my sixth grader and my high school girl students, don't you always cry, Ima, I have nothing what to wear and your closet is full of clothes. Now picture that. My aunt, Dora Frida, she ended up at the age of 14 in the ghetto, worked in ammunition, and when she jumped off the train, when she put on the train, she had one skirt, one sweater, one jacket, coat, one pair of shoes or boots, and she spent 2 years with one outfit in the woods. And when she came out in 1945 at the end of the war, the coat became a jacket, the skirt became a mini skirt, one outfit. Could you imagine, girls? She didn't open a closet full of clothes, and she didn't cry, Ima, I have nothing what to wear. Well, this remark lasted a short time for the high school girls. But anyway, so what I want to tell you, we were put now by Youth Aliyah on a kibbutz above the Kinneret, above Haifa, called Alumot. It was a very small kibbutz, had maybe 100 family, not too many children. Shimon Peres was one member. Amazing people. I was 4 years old and my aunt was close to 19. And after a few weeks, my aunt decided that kibbutz is not for her. It's first, it was not a religious kibbutz, and second, it was all couples. She didn't do high school. She wanted to go to Tel Aviv to get a job, and at nighttime do high school and learn Hebrew better, even though she had a tutor in her home for Hebrew and Chumash and everything else. So she left. So that's the second separation Sunday. I know my aunt for, I don't know, less than a year traveling, and now on a kibbutz, and she's leaving to Tel Aviv. And I left my father, which I hardly knew, also just for a few months, and he remained in Italy. And because he couldn't get to Palestine. And now I'm on a kibbutz by myself. I'm an orphan. So on a kibbutz, as you know, the children in those years, 45, slept in a children's house and played and ate in a children's house. And at 4 o'clock tea time, the parents would come to fetch them, and they would bring them to their home, and they would play and have snack. Now, what do you mean bring them to their home? I don't have pictures here, but home in 1945 on a kibbutz were wooden shack like a long row of wooden, a room and a bathroom, a room and a bathroom, a little balcony, maybe 4 rooms, 1 room and a bathroom, that was the home of the couples. And at 4 o'clock they would go and get their children, and they would play with them, feed them snack, tell them stories, sit on the grass in front of the house. Now, who was going to take me? I had nobody in the kibbutz. So there was a meeting in the kibbutz. Somebody had to adopt me again. So a family by the name of Leichtung, and I can't begin to praise them because they were the most amazing people that for the 60 years that I lived in New York, I never lost touch with them and their 3 daughters. Till today, they are like my cousins. Who were they? The mother, Chava, came on the last boat or ship that left Germany. Father was a psychiatrist, MD. The mother was a pediatrician, 2 doctors. She spoke 4 or 5 languages. She played 4 instruments. And guess what? Where did she work on the kibbutz, Chava? You'll never guess. She was the head of the refet, the cow shed, in charge of milking cows. This is a woman who could read English and play piano and sing. Amazing. And Avram, we called him Avremele because he called me Yaffale. Avram came from Russia with his father with 10 children to Petach Tikva, the mother of settlements, Emma Moshavot, in 1905. And he actually was born in Israel. And he wanted to become a farmer, chalutz, and so did she. So Avremele was in charge of the chicken coop place, also of building materials for the kibbutz, cement, bricks, wood for building. Now, I am 4.5, 5, and I live on a kibbutz, and at 4 o'clock I'm taking the family. Leichtung had 1 daughter when I came, Tirza, 2 years younger than me. She was 2. Then they had Miriam, and then they had Esti later on. And we used to come at 4 and play and have tea and etc. Now, the question so as we were growing up for 2 years in a kibbutz, Avremele used to have trips. Now this is, remember, 45, 46, 47, just before the War of Independence, and the kibbutz is above Syria. And Avremele, when he traveled to get some material for building, he would bring all kinds of little gifts for the girls. And he would bring me also. Now, what do you bring little girls? You bring stickers and crayons and coloring book, etc., etc. And one time, I must have been 6. Now, I never heard it till I was 50 years old, maybe, when Avremele told me the story. Avremele, I asked him once when he brought everybody a little gift, Avremele, why are you bringing a gift to me? I'm 6 years old, or 6.5. He said, but why, Yaffa? I bring gifts for all my little girls. But Avremele, you're not my father. You don't have to bring me a gift. I was like in shock when I heard it. Now I want to tell you it's nothing to do with my life, but one of my most famous psychologists was Chaim Ginot. Dr. Chaim Ginot wrote mainly about psychology of parents and children, and 2 books between parents and children and teachers and students. And his idea was kids are people too. Kids have feeling, kids have emotion, and you cannot take for granted that just because they're young, they don't have feeling. You have to verbalize and say that you identify, that you know that they have feelings. And this is an example how you see that at 6.5, I had a feeling, an understanding of my situation, that I'm an orphan, that Avremele, as wonderful they were to me, they didn't have to do anything for me. It was like a shocking thing to hear. Anyway, I spent the rest of their life keeping in touch with the family.
Yaffa, was your father in touch with you during this time?
Okay. Now, my father wrote letters to my aunt, and that was 1945. By 1948, he could have come already. There was a war of independence and Israel was free. Everybody, the gates were open. But my aunt wrote to him the following. There was austerity, tsena. There was no food, there was no work, there was nothing. It was a land that we didn't have fruits. We had oranges, the citrus, there was the cucumbers and cheese we ate, and then we had nothing. There was rationing. And people, she said, what would you do? You were a yeshiva bacher, you're gonna plow and build a road. What are you gonna do? Wait till things get better. So he waited in Italy, and at one point, by 1950, he had a job already in Italy. His brother that I said went to New York before the war, he wrote to him, why are you waiting for your daughter in Italy? Come to bring her from Israel, bring her come to New York, and you'll bring her to New York. And that's what happened. I was 10 years in Israel as an orphan. I was in a kibbutz 2 years, then the War of Independence, they took me out, Youth Aliyah, because children were evacuated. I was in a children's home 1 year in Hadera. Then I was rolled from place to place. I was thrown. No one knew if I'm reading good, if I know math. No one paid attention in the home to me.
Did your aunt come and visit you?
Oh yes, yeah. My aunt came to the kibbutz. She brought me beautiful clothes. She came to the homes. Yes, she was working in Tel Aviv, going to high school. Later she got married, had 2 children. I'll come to it. Now, after 1 year in Hadera in a home, they moved me to another children's home for 3 years. I'm in another children's home in Ramat Gan, give a time, a better home. And I'm beginning to learn, but still I'm way behind. And then my aunt was married, and every summer we used to go to the kibbutz or to my aunt. And that summer, when I was 10 years old, I spent with my aunt in Tel Aviv. We went to the beach every day, and almost every day, and not on Shabbat. My aunt had 2 children by then, and at the end, a week or so before the end of the summer, my aunt, what you call it, Avremele, and my aunt Avremele comes to Tel Aviv, and they both ask me, "No, Yafale, where do you want to live?" But I'll come back to it. During the summers, at the age of 9, 11, and later on when I'm by my aunt, I used to come for the summer, and one summer I must have been maybe 10, or maybe 11 already. Avremele at 4 o'clock tea time is asking me, we're sitting on the grass, "No, Yafale, which book did you read lately?" Oh my gosh, was I embarrassed. I didn't read any books. No one had books at home. And the only library I could think of was an hour walk in Tel Aviv in the main central station, Tachana Markazit. So which book? My aunt had few little books, but I didn't read. He said, "Did you hear of Dostoevsky? Did you hear of Victor Hugo? Did you hear of Emile Zola?" I was flabbergasted. I didn't hear of any of them, and I didn't read them. So now let's get back. I'm 10. That was when I was like 11 or so. So both are asking me, "Yaffa, where do you live?" So I ask you, can a 10-year-old make a decision like that? Can I decide where I want to live? I really want to live in a kibbutz. I loved it. We children, we were free. We rode on donkeys. We went down to the vineyard. We went to the Yam Kinneret. We swam. We could have gone to Jordan swimming. I loved the Kinneret all my life because of that. And we had so much freedom in the summertime for sure. Why would I want to live in Tel Aviv? But how again comes Chaim Ginot, the psychologist. At 10, I understood that this is the closest thing to my mother. It's my mother's sister. How can I tell her I want to live in a kibbutz and not by her? And of course I said I want to live with my aunt. And that's what I did. I lived 4 years by my aunt from 10 to 14. But I did visit the kibbutz on summers, sometime on Pesach. I want you to know it wasn't a religious kibbutz, but a Pesach Seder was engraved in my heart that every member of my family and every grandson knows that Savta Yaffa doesn't fall asleep till Chad Gadya. She sings every song and says every word of the Haggadah. Why? Because on the kibbutz, everyone is dressed for Chag, white shirts, and the kibbutz is decorated, and it looks festive, and they read the whole Haggadah, and every song is sung that the windows are shaking. So I remember Pesach as the Pesach in the kibbutz. So that's just an aside. Now, I am 14. While I lived at my aunt, I loved to dance. I never stopped dancing on the street, and I made cartwheels and splits, and my aunt saw that I'm so crazy about dancing. She sent me to a ballet school, which I got a scholarship with the top teacher in Tel Aviv, and I studied 3 years ballet, modern and classic. And now my father sends a ticket for me to come to America finally. This is 45. He came to America at 1950, and in 1956, on March 23rd, I have to leave Israel. I want to tell you, building the country in the 50s, 40s and 50s was a gift to this land. Everybody did something to build this country. And people who left were looked as traitors. They were called Yored, Yordim, going down, and coming as Aliyah, being elevated. And we had a teacher who, we were taught the Zionism so strongly, maybe in 5th grade, and she gave a composition to write something about the first president of Israel, David Ben-Gurion. And after the composition was returned, she called up on a boy called Rami, I still remember the name, and the teacher was Mrs. Bialer. And Rami looked like a little cherub, blue eyes, blonde curls, what a nice boy. And he read his composition. And at the end, she made mincemeat. She cut him to pieces because he wrote a caricature, a satire on David Ben-Gurion. It was probably his parents who were not Mapainik, who were not Ben-Gurion's fan, who fed him the opinion. But she yelled at him and at us, "Don't you ever say a bad word about your leaders of your country." And then I turned even to the Goyim in Yad Vashem who come, and I said, "Is that true in your country too? Do you respect your leaders?" And those things remained engraved by me, that we loved our country. No one wanted to leave it, especially me at 14. Friends, 8th grade. What's more important than friends as teenagers? But I had to sail on March 23rd on a new ship that the German Yimach Shimam gave us reparation, Zion Zion, and that was the name of the ship. And with on top in the ship, I'm totally alone at 14. I sailed for 2 weeks at the ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And at the daytime, I become friendly with all the teenagers on the boat. Now, as you see by now, I am cheerful, I never cry, I never felt that all the separation changes will destroy my life. I always moved forward and I was always friendly. So I befriended all the teenagers, but at night I cried why I left my aunt, my cousins, my friends, my country, and it was a very traumatic experience. And I'm coming to a father I don't know, to a stepmother I don't know, but she should remain. She was like a Cinderella case. And a sister who was 10 years younger than me that I don't know. A country I don't know, English I don't know. It is a whole new experience. When I get off the boat, I don't embark yet. Suddenly I hear a loudspeaker saying, "Yaffa Silberg, come to the upper deck." So I come up to the upper deck and there are photographers, journalists, my father, everybody on top, and they're taking pictures and interviewing my father. I cannot speak English, so I can hardly say anything. And they wrote articles in every paper the next day, the English and the Jewish papers. This is the Jewish paper, no, this is English. Over here is English, over here is Jewish. Here's again the same picture. They're very old. You have them, and some of them 10-year European Odyssey. Yeah.
Ends lifetime of tragedy. Nathan Hirschberg greets his daughter Scheindel.
Scheindel, right. Here and here. I was brought by the United Higher Service Council, who brought me on the boat.
And this is the first time that you've seen your father for?
Since I'm 4 years old.
Did you have privacy when you saw him? Or?
I saw pictures of him in Israel. My aunt had pictures. This is the difference. I saw pictures. So I knew.
And Yaffa, how was that encounter when you saw your father?
I must tell you the truth. I had no feelings for my father. He didn't raise me. I had no experiences with him. At 4 I left, and I grew up in school and this with different homes, and then my aunt. At one point there was a resentment when I was a little older already. How could he wait in Italy and not come to be with me? A mother would never do that. But I didn't dwell on it. It was just inside feeling.
Did you ever ask him?
Ask him? I never wrote to him really, maybe once.
But did you ask him later on in life? Why didn't you come?
Did I confront him? No. There was no point of doing it. It was history already. And why make him, I left it. I left it. He got a beautiful letter from my teacher that I left in 8th grade. He wrote it to him in Yiddish because we had intelligence tests to go to high school. High school cost money in Israel then. You had to pay. And I guess I did well, and I was a very good student. First I did. Till I came to Tel Aviv, I didn't know how to read well or math, but later on I became a top student by the age of 14 in 8th grade. So he wrote him that he should have a lot of nachas, that he has a wonderful daughter, she's very bright, a wonderful student, and it was a nice letter, you know.
So, Yaffa, I'm going to ask you a personal question if you don't mind.
No.
But in the picture we see here, so your father doesn't have a yarmulke on.
Oh yes, he does.
He does.
Oh yeah, he
was from.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This is what I want to tell you. He's baldy, but you don't see it.
But there is a yarmulke.
He was very from. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. And how was your reunion with his wife and your half?
With his wife, I don't want to say bad things about the dead, but she was a very difficult person. Unfortunately, the first time I met her was not after the boat, but my aunt was there, and I thought she was my mother, and she was very warm. And she, not because she was so short and this, she had a terrible personality. She was jealous of me. My father loves me more. She resented me. She was, her brothers and sisters would hang the phone on her. She was a real misanthrope. She was a terrible personality. And in all my life that I was rolled from place to place, I adjusted, but with her, it was a nightmare. And I therefore stayed only 3 years in that home. And I'll tell you how I did it. My father first put me in a Beis Yaakov seminary in Williamsburg, very religious. And here he's taking somebody who was a Zionist, who didn't want to leave the country, and who didn't have a religious. My aunt was traditional, but she said if Hitler could have killed her parents, and she saw her sister being killed and her mother went to Treblinka, she cannot. But she kept tradition. Her oldest son she sent to a religious school. He should know how to say Kaddish at least. And the thing is that I'm put in this Williamsburg seminary, and gosh, I was terrible there. And the girls, I befriended them. It was 2 buses to get there. They took an hour and a half in the morning. I told them once, you are standing online to do Natilat Yadayim. But the soldier who's standing up in the Galil, we didn't have Golan yet, the Galil in 1956, It's just as important. They wanted to kill me, the girls. I cried for 2 weeks, and I told my father didn't know where to send me. Had he put me in yeshiva called Flatbush Yeshiva, which was a modern yeshiva, Zionistic, Ivrit B'Ivrit, everything was taught, not in English. So I would have been in a proper environment. So after 2 weeks, I said, I don't want to hear the word yeshiva, and I went to public high school. I went to Tilden High School. It was Pesach time. I took all the classes in English, and in a half a year, I got 90s. And I did all the regents, all the tests, and on my senior year, I took French and Hebrew to get 100 on the, to raise my thing. I ended up with 98 average in high school after 3 years.
And how did you learn English?
I picked it up from television. I must tell you, my father, there was a beginning of TV. I watched movies, I picked up. By the end of the half a year, I was fine. Now, on my senior year, I asked my Hebrew teacher, I took French and Hebrew for credits, and I said, look, I don't want to forget my Hebrew, I don't want to forget, I want to learn more Chumash, more Ivrit, more this, and I would like to know where can I go. So she said, there is one place you should go. It's the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. It is a rabbinical school there, a cantorial school, and a teacher's institute. You could go now in your senior year, you could go twice a week. So I went my senior year on Monday and Thursday from, what time was it? 6 to 10 at night. An hour and a half traveling with 2 trains, subways. And on Sunday from 4 to, from 2 or 1 to 6, I don't remember, the hours. I would get up on Monday, 8 o'clock I would walk a half an hour to the high school, then at 3 o'clock come back, 3:30 I took 1 train, BMT, then I took the IRT, an hour and a half, and I would come to the seminary. I ended the seminary after 10 o'clock, and again an hour and a half, 11:30 back home, and the next day get up at 7 to go to the high school. I finished the year and I got a full tuition scholarship to the joint program of the seminary and Columbia University, which is one, it's like a Harvard of America. I got full tuition scholarship, and I had enough money to even find an apartment and a roommate. There were no dorms in the seminary, and I graduated high school. I went to college. I met at a seminary my husband, and we got married in 1962. We built a beautiful family. We have 3 children, 23 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren, one in a way. And I tell in Yad Vashem that Hitler did not win the war. He lost the war because we, Am Yisrael, we are here for eternity. Am Yisrael Chai Lanetzach.
Yaffa, I want to ask you, and it is unbelievable, can you explain these pictures?
Yes, okay. This, unfortunately, I wanted to go throughout the years that I grew up back to Poland to see the grave, my mother's grave. But I was told many times that there's no more cemetery in Lukov, that the seminary was destroyed, the monuments of marble were taken and sidewalks were built with them. And today in the forest, during the war, they threw the bodies into a big pit in the forest. There's a monument there, but here you could see what was the remain of just bones on the ground of the Lukov cemetery, the original one, that originally, but they removed everything, the marbles, the monuments, whatever. So that's the cemetery. And I was told not to go. I wanted to go, and my aunt, or the Frida, who only went once for witness, said, Yaffa, don't you give $1 to the Polacks. Don't you spend your money in Poland. They were just as bad as the Nazis during the war.
Did you ever go back?
No.
And have any of your kids gone back or grandchildren?
Yeah, my daughter went. My daughter, I think, is the only one went. She went on a tour of Auschwitz and everything. She also, I think, went to see the city, but you can't find anything, remnants of Jews in Lukov. I didn't raise my children to want to go. And I don't know how the Polacks are today, but bad memories of Poland were engraved in my mind.
And Yaffa, how did you, and I'm sure everyone asks you, how did you remain from? After what you've been through
no.
is...
When I came to my father, I wasn't from at all. I came from Israel. I mean, I went to a regular public school in Israel, so we learned Chumash, but we were not from.
Did you keep Shabbat?
Yes.
So
My
you were
aunt kept Shabbat.
you
We
were-
knew Chag, yeah. But when I came to my father, I had a rude awakening. He was from. He was Shomer Shabbat and davened, and a big mach in the shul. There's a Balkriya, and I learned to respect him slowly. Like I wouldn't watch TV on Shabbat, I wouldn't drive. I slowly started becoming Shomer at Shabbat. And then when I decided to go to the seminary, I learned more about Yiddishkeit. I learned Chumash, Navi, I learned I learned Ivrit, Dikduk, Sifrut, history was my major in Columbia and the seminary. And I became frum. And when I met my husband, who was frum and came also from a very frum family, Hasidish, like my father, an Amshin of Hasid, and we built a very frum home.
Wonderful.
But we were modern frum, I want you to know, in the sense that he was a big Zionist also, always wanted to make Aliyah. We tried a few times to come here, but we had a home in Ramat Gan, and then we bought a home in Yerushalayim, but he unfortunately had a bad heart, and after a few heart attacks he got a heart transplant in Columbia Presbyterian, and he lasted 25 and a half years till 85 years old. 80 or 80, I'm already mixing it up, but he 80. And he was like a miracle, but we tried, and the medical situation here wasn't attuned to like they took care of him in America. So, but we traveled all over the world. We were in Australia, we were in Hong Kong. I was in business for 4 years, watch business, where I sold watches to every department store in the United States. The Gatex, the Israeli swimsuit, we designed watches for them. I had a lot of different professions.
And Yaffa,
yeah.
I want to ask you, did you have a okay relationship with your half sister, with your
Who?
with your sister?
Oh, okay. My sister Sherry, it's interesting. She was 4 years old, I was 14. There was a 4-year difference. She adored me, and I liked it, but I was never home. I was at school, at night school and this, and I left home after 3 years to go to school in dorm. And then I got married, and she went to college already, then she got married. And we, 3 years, moved to Columbus, Ohio. We were teaching there, my husband and I, and she was in New York. And then when we came back, she was in Chicago with her husband. We were never in the same city, so it was not a close, it was a distant relationship. But a miracle happened. She was never in Israel in her life, and a miracle happened that 3 years ago. First, her husband passed away, unfortunately. They never had children, and they lived in Chicago a long time. And she remarried 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago. And he is an Israeli who lived in Chicago many years. And they made Aliyah, and they came, maybe it's 2 years, and they live near Haifa. And I see her and they visit, and she comes here and we speak a lot, and we are the closest now that we ever were.
And Yaffa, I have to ask you,
yes,
what message do you give to your children, the grandchildren, and to the future generations?
It's very individual. I think the question of life is that the person is made of two things: genetic and environment. And there were a lot of tests in the 50s, what is stronger. But you cannot change your genetic, and you cannot know how to adapt to your environment. My message is to be optimistic, not to look back, but look forward, to have faith in humanity, and to be cheerful, and to love every human being, and not sit and dwell on the very sad events in your life.
It is absolutely unbelievable. Yaffa, I just want to thank you. If I could I just want to very, wow. So Yaffa, no, it's all good. Yaffa, I'm just so grateful to you. There are no words. You are an inspiration. You really are.
I am
the
just
miracles, your story.
Ordinary person.
No, you're not. You are.
I'm just lucky
amazing.
that genetically my genes were strong, like my aunt family.
No, you know your family, and you can see what a family you came from.
Yeah,
they are so proud of you, and wow, there are no words really, because it is amazing, and to see you so smiling, and you've been through so much, and you're not bitter. You're so positive. It is inspirational to all of us. Yaffa, you are amazing. You should just have mazel bracha.
Thank you.
And maybe stream. You have you were going to show a little brooch.
Oh yeah. That's.
And I'm just. These are treasures. But if you could show.
Yeah.
Yaffa, everything that you've shown is so incredibly special and so.
This is a pen made of picture of my mother. My father kept it during the war.
It's amazing. You know, your father, that he kept the Shona Teva card, and he kept.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think what he went through,
yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Is it in the picture?
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm keeping it out.
This is so valuable, and it should just stay in the family. And
I'm going to show you a mezuzah that my grandfather wrote between.
And you have the mezuzah?
Yeah, right here. It's not framed well. You want to see it?
This is the mezuzah.
But I should take it out because it's not. Why can't I open it? Yeah.
This is the original mezuzah.
Yeah. His handwriting. My uncles kept it. when we went to Russia.
That's unbelievable.
I don't know what it says here, but
Oh, you should just keep it, and Yaffa, you should have all of Hashem's blessings.
Yeah,
and thank you so much, Yaffa. I'm so grateful to you.
It's my pleasure that you took your time to do that.